for joining me today. My name is Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and the founder of Women to Follow. We'll be joined shortly by my guests, Dr. Umberee Nehal and Dr. Sophia Yen. I'll be talking to them about the possibility, about an impact of a possible overturn of Roe versus Wade. I want to thank my terrific producer, Stephen Kaplan. You can find him at Spin It Social on Twitter. And the sponsor for my show, Women in Technology International, or WITI. Please join us. There's WITI. Please join us on Facebook, Twitter, and my YouTube channel, my Women to Follow YouTube channel. So I want to get right to it. There's a lot to talk about today. This decision, the leak of the possible overturn was just, I think, May 2nd. So it's very fresh. And I'll just read a little bit from what the Lancet said in an editorial. Lancet is one of the oldest respected medical journals. If the U.S. Supreme Court confirms its draft decision, women will die. The justices who vote to strike down Roe will not succeed in ending abortion. They will only succeed in ending safe abortion. Alito and his supporters will have women's blood on their hands. And with that, I'd like to, I'll introduce you now a little more formally to the guests, and we'll get to that. Dr. Umberee Nehal is an MIT Sloan fellow MIT Sloan fellow MBA candidate. She's currently studying the use of data and artificial intelligence to improve healthcare. Dr. Sophia Yen is the CEO and co-founder of Pandia Health, a birth control delivery company in Sunnyvale, California. It is the first woman-owned and doctor-led birth control company, she says, which I haven't seen a reason to believe otherwise. She's an executive committee member of the American Academy of Pediatrics. She's an associate, a clinical associate professor in the pediatrics department at the Stanford University School of Medicine. So, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate your expertise and sharing this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Young.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just to give a little background, and maybe you can jump in, but about the where we are now. Well, I'll ask you. I know because we talked about this little, Dr. Nehal. If you want to tell us just a little background about the main point of the Supreme Court Roe versus Wade case, and how how it stands on this privacy issue and how that's threatened and what that could mean.
Absolutely. So in some of my past experience, I've been a medical director in the Medicaid program and worked on health reform and worked on integration of mental health with the physical health, which also has a lot of important privacy concerns that overlap with this issue. So the prior ruling of Roe v. Wade was actually based on privacy. And because of that, even though it seems to be related to specifically women's health or reproductive health, frankly, once you get into privacy issues, everybody's affected. So I don't think anybody should feel safe. I'm especially concerned about the way this could become government overreach into health data. And instead of using it for health and wellness, it could be used for criminalization. So I'll stop there, but that's really my deep concern, and as well as the ways in which this can expand well past women's health.
Okay. And Dr. Yen, do you want to talk, just comment generally about that?
We knew that this was happening as soon as the majority of conservatives took over the Supreme Court, but to actually see it happen was just so horrifying. I think many of us just burst into tears and was almost as horrifying as when we heard that Trump won the election. Just unbelievable, living in a nightmare. And we thought it was going to be small, quiet, just, push back on the Mississippi, let it happen, and then let Roe v. Wade unravel and not be blamable. But for Alito to blatantly state that Roe was wrong and it must be reversed is just a slap in the face and an insult to anybody with a uterus out there. This is, to me, about freedom of religion. Your body, your choice, your uterus, my body, my religion, my uterus. And bodily autonomy is really important. If I am raped, or it's my body, and for you to force me to be your incubator for 9 months is not acceptable. And this is absolutely a sexist thing, because only those with uteri are going to be affected by this particular Roe v. Wade situation. But exactly as Dr. Nahal said, this is the tip of the iceberg of a whole bunch of different rights. They start with the uterus. Next, they're coming for anything in the bedroom. Next, these values just pervade everything, blocking people's rights to vote, blocking equality. And it's just a giant, horrible thing that's coming down. And we need to do our best to fight it, undo it, and protect our rights.
Can I add to that? I would actually say that currently, people without uteri also are affected. Frankly, for instance, there was a case where there was a woman who was on life support. Her own preference and her family's preference was not to be artificially maintained, but because she, had a product of conception in her uterus, she was not allowed to be removed from life support. Therefore, her entire family was traumatized. So I really want to underscore that while this may seem, and obviously the most obvious impact is on those with uteri, 100%, already it is affecting everybody. And I think that's a matter we have to take very, very seriously.
Yeah. As I like to say, we all came from the womb, and that's why I have my uterus necklace on. Respect the womb. No one escapes the womb. Right now, no one was born of an artificial womb. So we all owe somebody with a womb, and somebody with a womb is involved in all of our lives. And oftentimes, 60% of those that have a termination of pregnancy are in a family. And I believe 60% already have children. And so if I were to have an abnormal pregnancy that would danger my life, in some of these states, they'd make no exception for rape, incest, health of the mother. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure that if I were to die, my husband, my children would be very upset. They would much rather that I have the ability to terminate an unviable pregnancy, or a pregnancy that's a danger to my health, and then we can create lots of other future babies. So it absolutely has an impact on everyone with and without a uterus. And this is just the beginning of treating certain classes of people as second-class citizens.
Big question, big point big question that is raised by this is that, is the future of maternal health and where we are as a nation. We rank among developed countries. We don't rank near the top, given that we have such a great medical system. But the mortality rate for Black and brown women is 2 to 3 times greater than for white women. So I'll ask Dr. Nahal to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have a wonderful healthcare system if you need the most recent technology or drug. But if you are going through the healthcare system for a women's health issue, we do not have a great system. The data speak for that. Not only, is it affecting where Black women in particular have a mortality rate, depending on the state, 2 to 3 times, as you said, higher than white women. In some zip codes, it's even more than that, because that's the average, right? And we also need to think about, what is it that drives outcomes? As somebody who's getting an MBA, what drives outcomes is funding and policy and programs. So about 40% of women give birth on Medicaid. In some states, in fact, the states that have the highest maternal mortality, 1 out of 2 women, 50% are on Medicaid. Maternal mortality is measured up to a year after giving birth, or for a year essentially. Medicaid coverage in many states ends at 30 to 60 days, even though 10% of maternal deaths happen after 4 to 6 weeks and up to a year. So this is, again, there's the obvious things about if somebody has an ectopic pregnancy or a pregnancy that's not inside the uterus, which is not a viable pregnancy. It is the same as like having a tumor, because it's not going to result in life. That would be blocked by a lot of these changes. I'm hearing on social.
Maybe get to that, because
Sure,
that's another can of worms, right?
Of course, it's very hard to parse out because it's all interconnected.
It is. What do you see in your practice, Dr. Yen, in terms of Black and Brown women and how they're, how you're trying to help them? So,
Yes.
First, my question is, in your practice, and then maybe we can talk about the business that you've created.
Yes. So in the various teen and young adult clinics that I've been in, there is definitely different access to healthcare based on your insurance, right? And in a liberal state such as California, we have increased the Title X family planning funds up to 200% of the federal poverty level. And the statistics show that for every $1 you spend on birth control, the government saves $7, you as a society. And then private insurance, for every $1, they save $4 or $5. So I always say that it is financially foolish and morally wrong not to pay for birth control. It is just a numbers, basic math. For every $1, you get $6 extra. For every $1, you get $3 extra. So please cover birth control. The reason I went into adolescent medicine was because I was a pregnancy test counselor at Planned Parenthood as a pre-med high school student. I was 15 years old. I ran a pregnancy test for a 13-year-old young woman, and it came back positive. And I was just like, oh, and I gave her options. You can continue the pregnancy, you can continue and give it up for adoption, or you can terminate it. And she said, I'm going to continue the pregnancy. And I was like, okay, your body, your choice. But looking forward, where would our trajectories go? She would have such a hard time finishing high school, finishing college, getting into higher education. I would go on to MIT, UCSF, Children's Oakland, UCSF, Stanford, and CEO of a company. Very different lives, because I had gotten the ability to protect myself if I were sexually active from getting pregnant. And so that's to say, we need comprehensive sex ed, we need free birth control, and we need confidential access to reproductive health care. And those are the things that I've passionately fought for throughout my career as a pre-med up to medical school and throughout my medical career as well. And I like to say that if these people really wanted to prevent abortion, by making abortion illegal, you do not make it go away. You just make it dangerous, delayed, and expensive. And you are endangering women's health. And I am so impressed that The Lancet put out that opinion on their front page that women will die. Desperate women will take things into their hands and do desperate things. 2 more stories. 1, Berkeley, California, most liberal city in the most liberal state, one could argue. A woman was pregnant and she was single. She already had a child. She didn't want another child. So she took her son's hamster cage appendage, stuck it up her uterus, and tried to terminate the pregnancy. And this is in Berkeley, California. We in California pay for abortions. So had she known, just simple knowledge could have saved her from having her uterus eventually taken out, because the end result was hysterectomy. What could have been worse is if she was a young teenager who was afraid to tell her parent, did the same thing and hid it to the last moment, and then died of sepsis, which is bacteria running throughout your blood. And there used to be wards, an entire 20, 40 beds full of women where doctors could just hold the woman's hand and pray. And I don't want to go back to those days. And we shouldn't have to go back to those days. And then the second story, desperate teenagers do desperate things. A couple, cute young man, young woman got pregnant, birth control failed, condom popped. I don't recall the backstory, but they wanted to terminate the pregnancy. So the young woman asked the young man who impregnated her to help her terminate the pregnancy. He takes a bat to her uterus and starts hacking away at her uterus to hopefully terminate this pregnancy, young women throwing themselves down the stairs. This is what happens when you take the right away to legal, safe abortion. If you want to make abortion go away, pay for childcare, pay for comprehensive sex ed, pay for birth control. The number one reason, I'm thinking in Spanish, the number one way to decrease abortion is sex ed, birth control. Because if you can't get pregnant, then you will decrease the need for abortion. Though know that as long as there is birth control failure, and there's like 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 100,000, even in the best methods, and as long as there's rape and incest, we will always have the need for an abortion, I think.
Okay.
As well as, as mentioned, like, when pregnancy goes wrong, right? Nature does not always get it right. Pregnancy can end up in your tubes. It can end up in your abdominal cavity. You can have it like a child with or a fetus with anencephaly, meaning that they don't even have a brain or a head. And to force a woman to carry a essentially already dead fetus to term and give birth, the physical trauma, the medical risk, as well as the emotional trauma, it's unconscionable.
What do you, I guess, to go back to, there's this study that was done, the turnkey study? Turnaway. Dr. Nehal, do you want to tell us a little about that and what the findings were?
Actually, Sophia, I think I will punt it to you.
Okay.
I'm a better person for that.
Okay.
Yes. UCSF has a research group called ANSWER, and I think I can't give you all the acronyms, but Google it, ANSWER. They did the Turnaway study, and they studied women who wanted to terminate a pregnancy and then who could terminate and those that could not, and then followed them and checked how their lives were.
A 5-year, I think, they followed them for 5 years.
Yes, thank you. They followed them for 5 years, and then they checked in on them. And at the end of the 5 years, those women who were able to get a termination that they had wanted were doing okay. Those women who were unable because they were turned away for either it was too late or they couldn't afford it or different, rules, whatever, they were turned away. These women fared poorly because they had to continue a pregnancy that they didn't want to continue. Maybe it was, a result of rape or incest, or maybe it was just, again, couldn't afford it. One of the top reasons that women terminate pregnancies is because they already have a family, a husband, and 2 or 3 other kids. And right now is not a good time for their family to have another child, but the condom broke or, the birth control didn't work or something. And so as a family, it would be better not to have another mouth to feed at this time. And if government were to support them with child care and with funds, the states that have the most restrictive abortion laws are also the states that have the least support for single moms, for low-income families, for pre-K, for education, for childcare. It's the liberal states that allow women to choose, those of us with uteruses, to decide what happens to our bodies, but also supports low-income families. So that way supports the choice to continue a pregnancy.
I just want to add, related but not exactly the same, is that for those people who are like, well, I'm okay with it in some circumstances. I mean, personally, I really think that a woman always, or birthing person always needs to have the choice. But take that a step further. What is it that somebody has to prove to whom without evidence before you decide that they have access to life-saving care? Or before, let's say, God forbid, like a 12-year-old who's been raped by her uncle is allowed to access this? There are over 100,000 rape kits that have not been processed. Over 100,000 rape kits that have not been processed. We already know that many people don't report rape. They don't show up in the emergency department. I am traumatized personally as a physician by having the number of rape kits I have done on children, because I'm a pediatrician who's worked in the emergency department. Turn that around. Imagine being the child, having every part of you swabbed. And then for that kit to not even be tested. And until it is tested, you don't have access to an abortion. this is what we're dealing with. So when people are like, oh, well, there's some situations, oh yeah, well then who needs to prove what to whom through what process, and are those processes reliable? And I honestly do not believe that we need to parade a 12-year-old around in public for her to prove to you what happened to her. I think that should not happen in a civilized country.
Meaning that she should not have to prove in a court of law what happened to her? Is that what
Right,
you're saying?
especially if
To
you're not
get an
testing her kit.
abortion.
If there are 100,000 unprocessed kits, how is she going to prove anything to you? You're not even processing the evidence. But let's say even if the rape kits were being processed, no, I do not believe in putting a child through that re-traumatization of putting her through court before she can access an abortion. And sometimes the processes they have to go through gets them past the 6-week or the 2-month, whatever cutoff you're going to put in the state. You are setting people who have, quote, justified abortions. Again, personally, I don't think that we should be putting those restrictions on other people. But let's, for a thought experiment, let's say you were of that mindset. The system currently is setting people up to fail, and the evidence that they would need is not even being processed.
Okay. And to go back to, thank you, very enlightening. And I had no idea that there was a number like that of 100,000 rape kits that are not used. I'll just stop for 1 minute and thank Paula for joining us. Tuning in from Tallahassee, and I think Anne-Marie Leone joined us from Long Island. So thank you. To the question of who's most likely to have an abortion. I think that maybe we think, that it's the young child who, or the 15-year-old or the 16-year-old or the 18-year-old. But what are the numbers? I mean, the majority are women who already have children.
So
Correct?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, 60% of those seeking an abortion already have at least one child. 75% are low income. And therefore, if the government supported low income women with children, giving them financial support, giving them child care, etc., maybe they wouldn't feel the pressure to choose one way or the other. So we need more supportive programs. And these are families making decisions, not just a single person. But regardless, it should be up to the person with the uterus, with her choice in conjunction with her religious leader or not in conjunction with her family. But her uterus, her choice, my uterus, my choice, not your uterus, not your choice.
And frankly, it's even just your life, right? That we're talking about people like life, death, disability. This is life changing, could be life ending, right? And there's, as Rose, I had talked about, there's a number of situations, even in like menopause or before you can get pregnant, where the use of hormones might be banned. So all of women's health, all of health gets affected.
So how would, worst case scenario, you live in Texas, or you live in Oklahoma, how could your hormones be banned? I mean, how could taking hormones be banned? Sure.
So, I'll share personal, from my, personally, I have both endometriosis and fibroids. And I actually ended up in the emergency department with a hemoglobin of 7 when the low normal is 12. So I was only getting half as much oxygen to my brain and organs as I should because I was bleeding. They put me on hormones. And one of the options, and I haven't been able to sleep in 6 weeks because I'm on these hormones. Another option would be an inserted IUD. And some people believe that an IUD causes, quote, abortions because the egg and the sperm combine, but then it does not implant.
So to just roll this back a minute. Okay, so explain that to us again, because most people might not think an IUD could be subject to any state.
Correct. So an IUD is a device that is inserted into the uterus. And what it does is it does multiple things, but it prevents the implantation of the combined egg and sperm that, forms a zygote that normally would then implant. So your uterus has a lining, which is what sheds when during menstruation. So it prevents the implantation. Everybody has a different definition based on their personal beliefs or religion when life starts, right? So if you believe that the minute the egg and the sperm, the ova and the sperm combine, that's life, even before it's implanted, then there are some who believe that the IUD, the device inserted into the uterus, quote, causes abortion. In fact, most scientists would tell you it's simply contraception. It prevents the creation of, quote, an eventual life. But this is where personal beliefs, religious beliefs are trumping science. So if your personal or religious belief is that an IUD is actually, quote, an abortion, then all IUDs, regardless of the reason, might get banned in your state. If you are even...
Are there any states who are talking about this now?
Yes.
Yes.
Louisiana just put in a proposal that once the egg and sperm hooked up, then that is life. And that then goes to bleed on to IVF, in vitro fertilization. The example I like to give is, again, for debate, just to concretely, Berkeley woman has 5 embryos at UCSF. The embryos are at UCSF. Her uterus is in Berkeley. Is she pregnant? No. But according to Louisiana, there are 5 embryos that have a right to something. She goes to UCSF. They throw 3 embryos up her uterus, and then none of them stick, and she goes home and cries. Does she go home and cry because she had 3 miscarriages or spontaneous abortions? No. According to medicine, you are not pregnant until that egg and sperm hook up and stick. And only during implantation do we actually have that positive HCG, that pregnancy test, to know that you're pregnant, because only with implantation does that then secrete that hormone that we're looking for that indicates pregnancy. So as I like to say, leave medicine to the doctors and the medical community, keep the gyneticians out of our uteri, out of our bedrooms, and keep your religion out of my uterus. Your uterus, your religion. My uterus, my religion. You have every right to try to verbally convince me, but to force me by law is un-American.
It's unconstitutional, quite frankly, to force your religion on somebody else. Yes. I mean, personally, I come from a Muslim background. Jewish background and Jewish law and Islamic law actually often have overlaps. And in both religions, the mother's life takes precedence over the fetus, regardless, I believe, at the age. So because there are times when these are rare.
I think, well, I mean, in general, it's if the mother's life is threatened by the pregnancy, according to Jewish law, you would save the mother,
Correct. Yeah. Same in Islam.
So it would be against, and some, I've seen some rabbis, and I've seen it published about, in Muslim too, that this is against. So, where we think that, and then within the Christianity, I think it's not uniform.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing is there are Catholics who may not agree with what another Catholic believes. And the Constitution gives you the right to practice your religion. And if your religion gives you the right to save your life or to save your spouse's life or partner's life, why is somebody else's religion being forced into somebody's coupledom or marriage or family? That is not, I'm not a lawyer. I just took a class at Harvard Law School, but I'm not a lawyer.
It's like clear separation of state and religion, yes. Right? So if your religion believes that your right to have an abortion comes before, to your health, whatever you need for your health comes before saving whatever state that embryo is in, then correct. The state is in charge. And I think maybe we can clarify here, but with Roe versus Wade, the federal government superseded what happened, law superseded what happened with state law. So over the course correct. Since the 90s, states have been chipping away at abortion, right? Abortion rights.
Yes.
Right. And there's been, which engendered a lot of court cases, right?
Correct.
So we already have a jumble of laws, there's, and which will be further, complicated by, yes. because basically what, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, then control of your body is decided by the state. So if you live in Texas and they think that, you can't, you should not, an IUD represents an abortion, what do you do? So,
Right.
So one of the things in particular, having both of you here on the show, because you are doctors and you're both leaders in femtech and in, technology. Let me ask Dr. Yen first. Tell us what your company does briefly, and how something like yours, how what you're doing and other companies like you might do, are doing, are trying to do, that could help, God forbid this is passed, right? And we're in this state where Roe versus Wade is overturned. What can women do?
Yes. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of PandiaHealth.com. We chose Pandia, the Greek goddess of healing, light, full moon, because we're all about women's empowerment. And I also made up the definition: Pan is every, Dia is day. We got you covered every day. Set it and forget it. Let Pandia worry so you don't have to. Hashtag, I'm all about hashtags. Hashtag Pandia peace of mind. And the idea was, I was giving a talk to a bunch of physicians because I teach other physicians how to prescribe birth control. I teach future pediatricians or pediatricians in training what's the proper way to kick the parent out of the room, have a private conversation, and then, take care of the young adult to prevent sexually transmitted infections and unplanned pregnancies, et cetera, and involve the parents as much as possible, or a trusted adult. And they asked, why don't those with uteri take their birth control? And one of the top reasons is didn't have it in their hand. Didn't have time to go to the pharmacy every single month, exactly 7 days, and no more than 7 days ahead of time, because the insurance company won't allow it. And for those responsible people with uteri who usually run out of birth control on a Sunday, go the weekend before, you go to the pharmacy, you get to the front of the line and like, sorry, you got to come back tomorrow. The insurance company won't cover it. And you're like, but I'm here now and I have meetings tomorrow and I don't have time and I have children to pick up, I have things to do. Sorry, the insurance won't cover it. And so at that time, everything else was coming in the mail. And so my friend and I were like, well, we will solve this. We will just ship women birth control and keep shipping it to them until they tell us to stop. And then we ran ads, free birth control delivery. 60% of the women that responded didn't have a prescription. And it's like, don't you know, in the United States, you need a prescription for the birth control pill patch ring. You may not need that in China and maybe in some parts of South America, but you need that in the United States. And me being a doctor, I could write prescriptions, and thus Pandia Health was born. If your doctor writes a prescription and you have insurance to cover it, and thanks to former President Obama, current President Biden, who passed under the Affordable Care Act, any FDA-approved birth control is available with no copay, no deductible. So any you all with uteri, if you're getting charged a copay or deductible and you aren't demanding a particular brand when a generic is available, then you need to yell at your insurance. There's a great resource, coverher.org, which is the National Women's Law Center, and it tells you how to yell at your insurance, and they're collecting cases so they can group sue, hopefully, on behalf of people that are not getting their rights entitled under the law. So that's one. If your doctor writes it, you give us your insurance information, sign up for Pandia Health. Your doctor sends it to our partner pharmacy. We bill it, we ship it, and set it and forget it. Never run out on our watch. 2 months before your prescription runs out, we remind you, go see your doctor. Get a renewal 1 month before. Go see your doctor 1 week before. Please go see your doctor. And then in 14 states, we can write the prescription. It's asynchronous telemedicine. You fill out 20 questions, the same 20 questions I'd ask you if you came into my office. What are your medical problems? What are your drugs? What are you on? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you want to get out of this situation? How often do you want to have your periods? Do you want to have it every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, or never? And then our expert birth control doctors, we only have doctors on our platform and a minimum decade experience, most of them decades of experience. They've been trained on our algorithm to minimize side effects, to make sure your bone health is okay, to make sure the method we choose is correct given your body mass index, to prevent unplanned pregnancies. So we're a very academic group of people. We're the only academic doctor-led company in this space. You pay us $20 once a year to use our expert doctors. And as a physician, I made sure the follow-ups were unlimited and free, because I didn't want anybody stopping birth control or having breakthrough bleeding or some sort of horrible side effects. So birth control follow-ups are free. We're going to launch acne, menopause, wrinkle. That's not going to be free because our doctor's time costs a lot of money. But and if you don't get your acne treatment, you're not going to die. But if you don't get your birth control, it's a serious situation. So unlimited follow-ups about any birth control questions you have. And then we encourage birth control tourism. If you're not in one of the 14 states that we can currently prescribe, if you can get to one of those 14 states, and those of us on the West Coast forget, you just drive 30 minutes from New Jersey and you're into New York, from Connecticut and you're into New York, which is one of the states that we can prescribe. Fill out the questionnaire, pay $20, and then we can ship it to all 50 states. And you just got to get back to one of the 14 states. And as we get more money, more funding, we will be able to do more states. We also have at Pandia Health, if you go to pandiahealth.com /social good, a birth control fund. People can donate to it and get a tax deduction. People can apply to it and for birth control pills. We don't do the patch or the ring for that because they're crazy expensive and it would eat all our donations. But we need donations so we can give it out, and we're going to give it out at cost. We're not going to put in, our profit. But just so you all know, if you don't have insurance, it's roughly $15 per pack of pills, less than 50 cents a day. And 95% of birth control pills are generic. A lot of women think they're on a brand and like, I want Esteria. It's not a name brand. And so it's a generic, and therefore it's relatively inexpensive. But if it's a name brand like Ortho, Evra, or Yaz or Yasmin, then it's going to cost money. But there are generics of almost everything.
And let me ask you, what percentage of women are on birth control pill? What are the most common, the top three
birth control methods?
Yeah.
So in other countries, the long-acting reversible contraceptives. So Europe and other, first world countries, it's the long-acting reversible contraceptives, the implant, the IUD, and that's like 40%. In the United States, it's the birth control pill. And then comes the patch, the ring. They're on the lower side because they're expensive. But again, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, those things should be free, no copay, no deductible if you have insurance. If you don't have insurance, there's the Title 10 family planning. And if you're in a liberal state like California, we've bumped it up to 200% of the federal poverty level. But if you're in an unfriendly state, sometimes they reject it, or I don't know what, it's a lot harder to access. But generally, if you have no income, you can go to one of these clinics and it's free, or it's sliding scale according to your thing. But the birth control pill, the Pandia public service announcement I want to put out there today, know that there are 40 different pills. And so if you tried one and you didn't like it, there's 39 other pills, or at the very least, there's 8 different progesterones, 2 different dosages. So there's 7 other pills and maybe 2 different dosages that you can try. And at Pandia Health, I personally wrote 2,000 birth control prescriptions in 2 years, applied my MIT Stanford brain on the thing, put it in the spreadsheet so that we optimized it, and realizing what works for a Caucasian female that wants to bleed every single month doesn't work so well for an Asian or a Black or somebody who doesn't want to bleed every single month. And so we have an algorithm that minimizes side effects and maximizes the likelihood of you staying on. So we actually have 85% retention at a year, whereas normally people who start the birth control pill, 45% of them quit. And part of it is the delivery, and part of it is not having side effects.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, if I were not going to keep ending up in the emergency department passing out, I would stop my hormones. But they did change my hormones, and I have slightly less side effects. Still haven't slept, but it's not suited. Different control, but yeah, hormone.
Yeah.
But if you like, Rose, I can offer some other options from the femtech space. I think that's where you were going with that.
Before I do that, what I did want to bring up is the idea that people use period trackers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can the possible overturn of Roe versus Wade do if you're somebody who is tracking your period online?
Yeah, so we had talked about that. So there has been some advice that has gone out, just some concern about how information could be used or misused. Again, I have actually worked in compliance in government for the Medicaid space I was very particular about protecting patient privacy, but human beings are flawed and not every human being follows the same ethics. So if there are folks who believe that like for instance, the Texas law offers up to a $10,000 bounty for reporting if you believe that a healthcare provider or clinician or somebody underwent an abortion or did something, quote, wrong or illegal, you can report them and be eligible for a $10,000 bounty. So for instance, as Dr. Yen mentioned, it's only upon implantation and the release of hormones that you are considered pregnant. However, most lay people will go on the date of their last period. And in fact, if you go to the hospital and you need an x-ray, they'll ask the day of your last menses. So if you're using a period tracker, and if the company that runs that, the business model behind some healthcare apps, unfortunately, is selling your data. And so if they are selling your data, and if they do not have ethics,
they have the legal right to do that.
If it's a free app and you signed on, you don't know what rights you gave them.
There's a lot that you might have signed in the fine print. So essentially there's going to be a lot of lawsuits in this space. But what I can say definitively is that there is some advice going out, whether it's maybe over concern or not, we have no way of knowing. But there is some advice going out, like maybe you should delete your data from these period apps because we don't know what the laws will be, who in government will be asking for your data, perhaps legally. Which healthcare clinician might have certain beliefs and might even be willing to give the data, right? I mean, personally, if you ask me, I'd probably be willing to say I'm not going to comply. But I'm one of those probably problematic females in general.
I think that you are a caring physician protecting the health of your patient. I take it one step further.
Okay.
I don't mind being problematic. Sorry.
Yes, we want to be the nasty woman or the woman who dares to stand up, the energetic woman. I have a t-shirt that says, I forget the phrase, I think it was nasty woman. And my dad's like, look, my daughter has the nasty woman shirt. I love her energy and her fighting for women. But anyway, thank you, Dad, for being proud.
And I know that this weekend you marched with your daughters.
Yes, and my husband was there taking the photo because, the husband is always taking the photo. But notice we have our custom t-shirts. My middle daughter designed hers. I designed mine. Hers is pro-choice in Pokemon style. Mine is my uterus, my decision. And then my oldest has chick for choice. And the husband is taking
Rose, before we run out of time, I do want to make sure that we also, because I know that you had initially reached out to ensure that we also highlighted the issues of Black and brown women. And I might be a brownish woman, but I mean, I'm not Black, and it's very important to make sure that we center Black women. So for instance, while I very much respect Dr. Yen's commitment to expertise and excellence, we know that there's a dearth, for instance, of Black female doctors or Black doctors. And we know that race concordance maps directly to quality, safety, psychological safety. So for instance, there's a startup called Health in Her Hue that is Black woman founded, that helps match patients to physicians or healthcare providers, regardless of their background, of color. Those who are culturally sensitive. I personally have moved away from using culturally competent because I think the global North, Western colonizer culture, so to speak, essentially is very big on I have knowledge, I checked a box, I have my certificate on the wall. And reality is, I mean, I went to medical school in Pakistan. Some very excellent care is delivered by lay health workers in villages who risk their lives facing the Taliban. So we need to keep women healthy, and whatever team-based care, whatever culturally appropriate care achieves the results That's all I care about. I really don't care what certificates you have on the wall. I care about results. And my career has primarily been in policy and focused on budgets. And then speaking on budgets, there's also a startup, a woman-founded startup called Maven Clinic. And one of the women to follow that I suggested is an executive in that, which has something called Maven Wallet. Because as Ruth Bader Ginsburg had told us, the women who will be most affected are poor women, women with low resources. Privileged women will always find a way to go to a different state, go to a different country, backroom but high quality abortion through their country club contact, right? There will always be women who get what they need or birthing people who get what they need. Maven Wallet was actually, as soon as the Texas law that I mentioned with the bounty came out, they already started working on ways to empower women to understand their choices, how much things would cost, just try to start to coordinate across state lines. And just today on LinkedIn, I also saw a post about a female executive saying, do we need to think about where we headquarter our companies so that we think about where women have access? So while there's a lot to, I have done, not this weekend because I'm still anemic, but I've definitely been up there jumping up and down with science, with uteri and all of that in the past. But we really, really have to be smart. And we have to think about workarounds. Fighting the barriers, 100%. We need to do that. Being super smart and navigating around the barriers, innovating, using femtech, using all of digital health, being proactive on health privacy. And you know what? If you see a peer who is violating ethics, report them. I know that it's like against professionalism. It's thought, there's like a club and you're not supposed, I don't care. If you're doing something wrong, I don't care. I'm reporting you. If I do something wrong, it's all right. You can report me. And if I did something wrong, it'll show up in the data or the evidence. I really think we need to get out of this club mentality. We need to be committed to data integrity, privacy, sound policy, and put the money there. Like, we have got to put the money there.
I think what I wanted to say, and this perfectly circles back, is that it's not just these private companies that have your data, but the point is, even if they swear to goodness they're not going to sell your data, someone can subpoena it for a court of law.
Yes.
And say that she had her period went away, and then she got her period again, aka she had an abortion. And during this time, did she search on the internet? So they're going to check your search record and see if you searched Plan B, see if you searched medication abortion. So that's why people are at another reason to delete all of your data on any period app. And some people say, even if you keep it on paper, that's to be your own secret code, because if your sorority sister hates you and wants to screw with you in Texas, she can report you to get that $10,000. Or if there's somebody who needs $10,000, just sue every person they think might have had an abortion. And there are lawyers, that will go after it for the contingency fee. Or the other side is just so well funded. So that is the concern, is that someone's going to subpoena your phone. And even if it's not your phone, it's in the cloud. And I went to MIT. I have friends that do computer forensics. They can find anything unless you only stored it at your house. If it was anywhere on a phone, on a computer, in the internet, they will find it even if you deleted it. There are websites that have been deleted and you can pull them back. So it's 100%. Out there. And that's why they're saying delete it. And that's why I'm actually advocating a radical idea, #periods optional. Not so radical, but an extension. Go to pandiahealth.com/periods optional. At the bottom is my TEDx talk on making periods optional. Everybody with a uterus, you don't have to bleed once every single month. And actually bleeding fewer times decreases ovarian, endometrial, colorectal cancer, also decreases landfill. We use 10 to 13,000 menstrual products. But if we go on the IUD, the implant, or the shot, and our periods are weird, they can't track them. If we go on the pill, the patch, the ring, and have a scheduled bleed every 3 months or every 6 months, they can't track them, and our data will become useless. So that is kind of a thing. And then back to, what am I hearing? We're hearing about 14.5 to 15-year-olds begging their parents to put them on birth control, because in case they're sexually assaulted, at least they won't have an unplanned pregnancy. And that is sad that these young women have to consider it. But I have 2 daughters. They're 12 and they're 15. The statistic is 1 in 4 college-educated people with a uterus will be sexually assaulted. And exactly as Dr. Nehal said, they aren't testing the rape kits. They aren't even presenting for rape because it's he said, she said, or penis said, vagina said, you know, and you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt or whatever. So I'm not letting my daughters apply to college in any of those states that are going to make abortion illegal. Georgia has a law in their books that if you leave their state, have a termination, come back, again, that evil sorority sister or who knows what, that reports you, you can be arrested as you come back. So just because you think you can leave the state, come to California and go back, that may not be, well, it is an option, but you risk, you know, getting arrested.
Well, very, very scary world. Dystopia.
But we have solutions. It is very scary.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of allowing, look, I mean, I have lived in Pakistan, right? I have worked in villages where there's like tribal elders, right? I mean, Malala is Pakistani. So, I mean, the way I live life and the way I was raised is you don't, and there's, you know, Black women leaders in America as well, you know, Audre Lorde, who talk about this, that the fear doesn't go away. You just use that fear to power you for solutions. You do not ever let them win. You do not ever give up.
That is so important because I think we were going down that death spiral. So I do want to offer 2 resources that everyone should have. 1 or 3. One is plancpills.org. This is a nonprofit run by Francine Coito, a very respected woman in the reproductive rights movement. I believe she got emergency contraception over the counter in the United States. So plancpills.org tells you where you can get a medication abortion, gives you the legal telemedicine companies and what states they can do. But it also has this other group that you can order medication and pills from India from safe, trusted pharmacies and do it yourself. And then on the website, they have a medical advice line by a different organization. It's not her. She doesn't make any money. It's a nonprofit. And then there's a legal one. So if it's illegal in Texas, but I order it from India and I do it, what is the legal thing? And then just for everyone to know that right now, if you do a medication abortion and you need to, you have complications or you need some follow-up, you show up in an ER, there is no blood test that they can do to see if this was a spontaneous abortion, aka miscarriage, or a medication abortion. So just walk in and say it was a miscarriage, you know, but again, you didn't hear that from me if I'm suable on that point. 2,
you're back. I've got the whole law school community behind me.
Cool. And then 2, there is What If Roe Fell. So Google What If Roe Fell. It's a great map. It shows all the different states, which ones have trigger laws, which ones have crazy laws that if you leave the state, we'll sue you later kind of thing, which one has the 10,000 bounty law, and they're updating it all the time. It's the Center for Reproductive Rights. And then lastly, don't reinvent the wheel. There are people that are like, we're going to do the Underground Railroad, blah, 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 blah. These networks already exist.
Exactly.
Fund the ones that exist. So the National Network of Abortion Funds, you can donate, you can ask for help, and you can volunteer. So I just learned, I wanted to pressure Uber and Lyft, and I still think we should do that, to donate a certain amount of rides. I want to donate every hotel to donate a room for somebody who might need it or more, 10% of the rooms, whatever. Let's peer pressure all the hotels, Hilton, Hyatt, Fairmont, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, all of that have to donate a certain percentage of rooms. But you have to have somebody that's willing to legally take responsibility for you after a termination to make sure if you're groggy or whatever. So that's why you can't do Uber or Lyft. But I was like, pre-med teenagers could be that person, but you have the free Uber Lyft if they don't drive or they don't have a car.
And I just want to add, I know we're at time. Again, there's within feminism, there have been divisions. We need to ensure that it's not being driven by elite feminism and that, again, we always center Black women. There are communities in Black communities, there are communities in every community, in immigrant communities. They may not communicate with elite feminists, right? I mean, both, we both, Dr. Yen and I both have, credentials from like MIT, Harvard, whatever. We may not, I personally do a lot of community work in the Muslim community, and I go into neighborhoods that maybe other feminists may not always frequent. But just because we need to make sure that we are going to the margins, we are centering the people who are most marginalized, most affected, who have historically been the most oppressed. They have the knowledge. They've been dealing with this for centuries. Yes, use every resource, but we always, always must center Black women.
Thank you. And I just want to say hello to one of our viewers, Sunny Slaughter, who's a terrific advocate for all women and for Black women, saying she's a member of the APHA Black Caucus of Healthcare Workers, and saying that we need to do these discussions, people like her and people like you, yes. So people are aware of what they can do. And Sunny says, I'm a law enforcement and litigation expert, and if it's documented, it can be found. So thank you, Sunny, very much for watching, and everybody else who's watching. I haven't been able to see all the comments, but I really appreciate everybody watching and sharing your comments. And thank you, Sunny. We're humbled. We're honored to have you. Let me. One of the things that the hashtag started because I put out a tweet that said, "Let's get women. Let's name 3 women to follow and get the party started." So in that, and that's how in 2 weeks there were 12 million impressions of this hashtag. That's how it started. So Dr. Yen, I wanted to ask you your woman to follow. And I think, of course, overachiever, you gave us more than 3.
Yes, exactly. There's like so many women. Yes. If you don't mind going to the first slide, I will tell you the background. Okay. So we have Dr. Esther Chu. She's emergency medicine. She's part of the Me Too movement for physicians and healthcare workers, speaking out about sexual assault, and is such an activist and a mother. So love Esther Chu. She already has a ton of followers. Cindy Gallup is Make Love Not Porn, and she has porn in normal people, all different body sizes, all different orientations. Good porn, not porn that's all shaved and with giant body parts that are not normal. Mutual orgasm, respect, that kind of porn. So such an advocate. And then Dr. Jen Gunter, love her book, The Vagina Bible, The Menopause Manifesto. And I believe she also has a huge following on TikTok and Insta. So just such important reproductive health out there. And then Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, she wrote the book that I wanted to write, which is all the questions about your reproductive rights. It's exactly the book I would have written with beautiful art. So hers is the talk down there. And she too has some strong TikTok going. And then Arlen Hamilton, a woman of color, a woman who was homeless and decided to go into venture capital and fund people of color, fund LGBT, fund underrepresented people. So please follow her. Please, if you want to invest, check out Backstage Crowd, and also SheEO, Springboard Enterprises, Stanford Stardex. Thanks. And then Precursor Ventures as well. These are all great people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. They're all, I think I follow all of the women already, Dr. Yen. Now I'd like to ask the same question to Dr. Nehal.
Yeah, so I think the first one is I already mentioned Dr. Jane Van Dis, who's with Maven Clinic, whose startup is doing the Maven Wallet to help coordinate care across states, and employers can also find ways to help women afford needed care. And then also Dr. Kimberly Manning, while she's not specific to reproductive health, she is an amazing Black woman physician whose narrative medicine I've learned a lot. And I think a lot of people learn from. And just to add, staying on the slide and add to what you were saying, Dr. Yen, I think it's not only about body parts. I mean, in fact, if you're a woman of color, the large body parts might actually be quite realistic. But, not everybody's woman parts are pink. And we need all colors. There's places in India where there's bleaching products to try to make your woman parts look more white. So we need more female influencers who normalize every kind of body. So that's partly why and then Dr. Jasmine Marcelin is an ID physician, but again, a woman of color who is very active in the academic space. So while, again, not specific to reproductive health, I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. So those were the three that I had to offer.
Thank you so much. And I try to do something called Wednesday Women to Follow, and I will put out tweets. And the idea of the tweets is that if you're named, you in turn name more women to follow. And there's a woman to follow Twitter list that you can find under my name that was started, when I started the trend, and now has about 1,800 women.
Amazing.
And as issues have come up, I've defined those a little bit. So I recently put out a Women to Follow Ukraine list that has about 200 women, and they can be women, academics, experts, journalists, because we want to see women quoted. I mean, and certainly women's health. So I started the same thing. So there's a Women to Follow / abortion Twitter list that I've started. And I will certainly name those 8 names and keep naming. And as people put names in that thread, I'll be better, it'll keep growing. And that's the idea. So that if I'm a reporter in Lexington, I want to do a story locally about what's happening, or I'm a news station, I can turn to women, and there's no such thing as saying, oh, I can't find a woman. So I'm going to quote a man on all these things. So I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I really appreciate your wisdom that you shared with us, and so many useful things for us to try to do. So I will ask each of you if you'd like to give us some closing thoughts as we wrap up, as we finish. Dr. Nehal.
I think just don't give up, right? Just no matter what, that the intention is, we saw such a tragic event just this weekend in Buffalo. The intention is to intimidate. The intention is to scare you. The intention is to make you go docile. Do not ever give up. There's always a solution. There's always a community. It's hard. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to feel your feels. Whatever you need to do, do it. Take care of yourself, and then keep going.
Thank you. Very powerful words. Thank you, Dr. Nehal. Dr. Yen.
I am a person who likes listicles. So don't get angry and apathetic. Get angry and active. Make sure you vote. Make sure you bring 5 people to vote. Donate to, volunteer for any pro-choice candidate that supports the right to bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. And ask every elected for every office, school board, mayor, etc., where they stand on abortion rights, where they stand on reproductive rights. And then third, share the National Network of Abortion Funds, share plancpills.org, and make sure everybody gets the best birth control possible that wants it, that might need it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yen and Dr. Nehal. And maybe if with some of the resources you listed of some of the women who are, doing these femtech, leading these femtech companies that are going to help this, and also with these resources that, where I can look at a state and see where it is, and maybe we can make a thread that share that, and so people have that resource. But we'll also be putting out some clips and some, and tweets to share this great information that you've been so generous providing us. So thank you. And my next show will be in another week or two. And I kind of lately have been kind of watching the news, and I may visit this topic again or another one. But I want to thank everyone for joining me and joining our wonderful doctors. I hope we've educated and enlightened everyone, and I will see you next time. Thank you. And let me thank my producer again, Stefan, who's done an amazing job, and Women in Technology International, who is my sponsor. Thank you very much. Have a good night.